Good evening, it's Rob here. Welcome and thank you for joining us on a Sunday. I appreciate everybody taking time out on a Sunday. It's always a difficult when to pick the right time for these sessions, so hopefully you're going to get some good value out of giving up a little bit of your weekend from today. Could you just type in the chat box for me if everybody can hear me okay and see my screen okay? You should see it, my opening slide. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, the yeses are flying in from everybody, so I guess that's a good sign. Tonight's session, or today's session, depending what part of the world you're in, here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about how to sound like you know what you're talking about when you're selling AdWords without you guys having to be AdWords experts. This course isn't intended to make you an AdWords expert. This course of PPC Profits is all about helping you to sell AdWords and deliver the service. It isn't about knowing everything there is to know. So that's what we're going to focus on. In terms of housekeeping, we're going to record this session. We do know GoToWebinar can be a little bit funky sometime when it's recording, so assuming everything works okay, we'll have a full recording of this. I'm going to upload that recording into the members area of the PPC Profits as soon as it becomes available to us. I'm also going to upload all the slides from the presentation there as well as a PDF. Because the way I've put this together is, first of all, for everything that I'm going to cover, I've put an explanation together. I've then got a live screenshot so you can see on screen what it looks like, what I've just been talking about. So it should give you context for the language that we're using. So this is a little bit technical tonight, but we're trying to focus on just the stuff you need to know or words you're likely to hear when you're pitching AdWords. At the end of that session, as we go through that, if you have any questions on the specific terms that we're going through on any given slide, pop them in the chat box. What I'm going to do, ask a question. I will, at the end of each slide, go through those questions so that we don't move on from a subject until everybody's clear on what that subject means. At the end of that, we'll open a free Q&A for any questions that we haven't covered already. If that's okay with everybody, if you're happy with that, can you just type a quick yes in the chat box again so I know that makes sense? Cool. Fantastic. Yeses are flying in, so I guess that's okay with everybody. If not, we have no plan B, so I'm glad you like it. Right, here we go then. So AdWords 101. I've laughingly called this how to not sound like an idiot when you're selling AdWords management. I could have equally called it how to sound professional, but I think this is more engaging, so we're going with this. Okay, we're going to start with performance, and specifically the language of performance. And there's a reason that I'm doing this, because in terms of importance, this is the most important thing in the session. Okay, this is the thing that you're going to talk to prospects and clients about more often than anything else. So if you know nothing else about AdWords language, if you know about how a campaign performs, and I'll define a campaign shortly, then you're in the right place. So let's start with the language of performance. Okay, when we're looking at an AdWords campaign, the first thing that any prospect or any client is interested in is what did they spend? And here's how AdWords talks about spending money. The first thing you do to spend money is you buy clicks. A click being the number of times that an ad that you show on Google is clicked. So I'm sure this is all basic stuff. If you know this already, this should just be a good refresher. If you're brand new to it, this is everything you need as an intro. So clicks is simply the number of times your ad is clicked, and it's a whole number. Cost is the next word you're going to see in AdWords, and cost simply means the total cost of clicks that you have paid for in any given period. And it's simply a total of each individual click. Just as an aside, you can bid twice on the same keyword, and your ad can get clicked twice, and each time it might have a different cost depending on the competition at the time. So, the cost that you spend is simply the sum of the cost of each of those clicks. It's always in your local currency, whatever the currency of the account is set up in. Your cost per click, which is an average, is simply total cost divided by number of clicks. That gives you your average cost per click, and again, it's a currency. And the final thing on what you've spent is the limit to how much you can spend each day with Google. You set that as an account manager, or we set it on your behalf, or whoever your service provider is, sets that amount on a daily basis. So budget might be $25, it might be £100, it might be $1,000. It's whatever you set. Quick note on budget, Google can sometimes very, very slightly overspend by 0.5%, that kind of number. So if you see that, don't worry. There's no calculation, you choose the number. Okay, so what does that actually look like in AdWords? This is a screenshot from the AdWords interface. This is a standard opening screen from AdWords, and I've highlighted all the bits we've just talked about with a big red box around them. So we've got a budget here. We've got number of clicks here. So this is quite a big campaign, as you can see. $1,250 a day budget, and you can see it's expressed as a day. We've got 12,723 clicks, an average cost per click of $2.10, and a total cost for the period of $26,743. Hopefully, that's really, really simple. I'm guessing nobody's going to be shocked by this so far. These are words you've probably all heard already. So that is a definition of what you have spent in AdWords. And a quick tip, if you're in the AdWords interface at any time and you forget what any of these mean, or you would like to clarify, you'll see each of these boxes have a question mark in the upper right hand corner. Anytime you hover over that question mark, Google will help you provide you with a definition. Okay, so that's what you've spent. Anybody got any questions on what we've spent before we move on to the next section? And the chat box is looking very quiet, so I'm hoping that all made sense. Okay, right, good, we've not shocked anybody so far. Next section is how you spent it. So we know how much you've spent. The next thing is, well, how well did you spend it? So let's have a look at how well we spent that money. So the first term that we come across a lot is impressions. And I always find impressions a slightly odd way to express the number of times your ad is shown. I understand it, it makes sense, it just always feels to me like a rather cumbersome word. So an impression is simply each time your ad is shown, and again it's a whole number because you can't half show an ad. Click-through rate is how often your ad is clicked for every 100 times it's displayed. So as you can see, the calculation for this one is clicks divided by impressions. And you'll hear click-through rate mentioned an awful lot. People will ask you about what click-through rate is on the campaign. What's a good click-through rate? What's a bad click-through rate? It's a word you'll hear often and over again. Something you will see less often, but I want to draw to your attention because it's important, is something called impression share. And it's a slightly more difficult concept. I'll try and explain it with an example. Imagine you have a $100 budget per day, and an average cost per click is $1. So you can get your ad clicked 100 times, and maybe, let's say you've got a 10% click-through rate. So if you've got a 10% click-through rate, your ad is going to need to be shown 1,000 times for you to get your 100 clicks and spend your budget in the day. So if you've got 1,000 impressions, it might be that in your market, that search term that you're bidding on might be shown might be searched 10,000 times a day. And if it's shown 10,000 times a day, but you can only afford to buy 1,000, then you're going to have a 10% impression share. So impression share is simply the number of times your ad was shown compared to the total number of times it could have been shown. Okay. So it's a slightly more difficult concept to understand. Here's why it's important. If you have a client who's got $100 daily budget and they're getting a good return on their ad spend, and we'll talk about returns in a moment, then you can go to them, dear Mr. Client, you've bought 100 clicks today and that's been profitable for you, but did you know you've only got a 10% impression share? Therefore, if you spent 1,000 per day, you could increase your results 10 times. So that shows you how much capacity there is to grow your campaign. Now there's a couple of reasons why you won't get 100% ad share, impression share, and it's not just down to budget, but at a simple level, if you've got a 50% impression share, you can double the size of your campaign. If you've got a 10% impression share, you can 10 times the campaign. If you're in the 90s, then you probably need to look for a different way to grow your campaign. So hopefully that makes sense. And the average position is, moving on to the next one, is simply the average position on the page where your ad was shown each time. So it might have been shown 5 times in position number 1, 5 times in position number 2. Out of 10, you're going to get an average of 1.5. So it is simply the average position that your ad is shown on the page. Just a quick point to note on average position. We can drill down into detail that tells us how average position compared between desktop computers, mobiles, and tablets. And the reason for mentioning that just now is that I like to try and keep our ads wherever possible in the top 3, but usually not in position 1 because it carries a high premium. That's on fine for computers. On mobiles, the top 2 positions are the only 2 that are worth having, because position 3 is way, way, way down the page. Nobody ever sees it. So be aware of that. It's a subtle difference, but average position is where you want to be. Now, sometimes your clients are going to say to you, I saw my ad, and it was halfway down the page. Why aren't you optimizing my ads? Why is it so far down? And that's because Google does not guarantee a position. A bid does not guarantee a position. But all you can do is manage the average, and providing your average is in the right kind of place that you're targeting, you're absolutely fine. But you will get exceptions. And that's nothing to panic about. That's perfectly normal. So let's have a look at this in the interface. Again, big red boxes to try and make this easy to spot. As you can see, all I've done is I've put extra columns on the screen from what we had before, so I've just built on what was there earlier. So we're now showing impressions, shortened to IMPR, 1.8 million, click-through rate of 0.7%. If that was my campaign that I was running, and it isn't, I wouldn't be very happy with 0.7% because this is actually a search campaign, which isn't very good. I'd be certainly looking to at least triple that. Search impression share, as you can see, 24%. So in all likelihood, this campaign could quadruple in size. It could be 4 times bigger if they were getting a good return on it. So that really illustrates the point I was making a moment ago, that there are opportunities and there are information in AdWords to help you sell to your client by pointing out if there are opportunities for them to expand what they're already doing. They don't have to think about doing anything else. They can expand what they're already doing. And you can see here the average position of 4.2. Okay, so that's what we've spent, and that's how well we've spent it. Quick shout out in the chat box. Is this making sense so far? Any questions at this point? Okay, that all looks all right. Okay, a couple of questions that have come in, so some really, really good ones that have come in. I'm going to stop to take a moment to answer those. Jordan's asking, what click-through rate should we be aiming for? I'm probably going to duck that question a little bit, if I may, Jordan, because it depends entirely on what type of campaign it is, and I'll explain some of the variables in that later in this session. And it also depends whereabouts on the page you're putting your ads. So there's lots of variables in there. What I would say, though, as a rule of thumb, a 0.7% click-through rate on a search campaign is very, very poor. I would be looking for, we don't have many that run less than 3%. We have campaigns that run at 15%. It depends how tightly and how focused you're targeting something. It depends on your ads position on the page and lots of other things. But good question and perfectly sensible. And in another session, perhaps we'll look at some examples of that. Stephen, asking the question if you should be concerned with this if you're outsourcing. The only reason for being concerned with this, Stephen, is just so you can have an intelligent conversation with your client if they ask you the question. If a client asks you something, if you can answer them articulately, or a prospect asks you something, at least you'll always know what they're talking about. In terms of the actual performance of the campaign, if you're running a campaign, absolutely it's your outsourcer's problem, or whoever you're doing it, to make sure the performance is right. You just need to know what the numbers are and how to talk to somebody about them. And Jay asked about, would we want to, in this example here, would we want to improve the click-through rate before we expanded the campaign? Not 100% sure on that. It's not my campaign, so I don't know. I'd need to look more into that. It depends if it's profitable or not, and I don't know. And Fran, I'm not sure what verbiage you want to go with this, but obviously we'll have this recording. So if that doesn't cover it for you, shout and we'll go through it again. If not, find me another question off, Fran, if I've misunderstood what you're asking, and I'll get back to that in a few moments. Okay, let's jump on to the next slide. So next, we're going to talk about what you got back. So we know what you spent. We know how well you've spent it. The key thing that really matters most, and that all your clients should care about, I would say should because they don't always, but should care about, is what did they get for their ad spend? How effective was it for them? And here are the words that you're going to see when you talk about return on ad spend and performance. First thing you're going to see in AdWords is something called conversions. A conversion is simply, for an example, an inquiry or a form completion or a phone or a sale. Whatever you're doing in AdWords, it's how many times did what you want the user to do, did they do it? So if you know how many times they did what you want them to do, that's a conversion. So it might be a form fill, it might be take a survey, it might be download a document, it might be ring you. All of those things can be set up and tracked in AdWords as part of your service provider's service to you. You can track all those things, and it's important you know what your customer wants to achieve. So what kind of conversions your customer wants is absolutely critical to the campaign. So conversions is the number of conversions that you achieved. The conversion rate is how many times out of 100 visits from an ad click did your users do what they want. So conversion divided by clicks gives you a conversion rate, and this is constant. You're seeing this same idea coming right through everything we're looking at AdWords. The next concept is a cost per conversion, and this really matters. So if you've spent $100 in the day and you've got 5 conversions, that each of those conversions has cost you $20 on average. Now, if your business knows that each of those $20 conversions, maybe let's say that $20 conversion is for an inquiry. So someone's filled a form in on your website. That form's cost you $20. You've got 5. That's cost you $100 in total. So the key question is, of that $100 spent and those 5 inquiries, how much can you sell on the back of that? If you're selling roof repairs that cost $5,000 a time and you close half, then you should be doing the happy dance because you've clearly made a lot of money on those leads. If, on the other hand, you're selling, I don't know, $5 coffee mugs, you're probably going to have a problem at that kind of level. So the cost per conversion is absolutely key because that determines whether or not you're profitable. The final thing on here just to mention, something called view-through conversions. Now, view-through conversions are a little bit more technical, and I'll explain them, although I'm aware that I'm going to use a word that I haven't mentioned yet, which is remarketing. Remarketing is a particular type of campaign where you show your ads to people who've been to your website already, either through an ad click or through any other source. So, if a remarketing click is where someone's seen your ad. Sorry, I'll start a sentence again. So a conversion from remarketing, a view-through conversion, is where someone has been to your website, they have subsequently seen your ad maybe a day later, a week later, and then without clicking your ad, they come back to your website and they take a conversion action. So they phone or they fill a form in or they do something to take a conversion action. So we see this a lot with remarketing campaigns. So someone comes to your site today, you're then showing them ads for the next month, and during the course of that month, they won't click it. Most times, most remarketing campaigns, they won't get many clicks, but people who see the ad but don't click it come back. And AdWords tracks that. It knows that that person came through remarketing, it knows that they've been seeing your ads, and it identifies them as an additional, what we call a view-through conversion. So it's a little bit more technical, but view-through conversions are great because you've not paid for a second click. You may have paid for them to come to your website the first time with an ad click. They may have come through SEO, but because of your follow-up ads, they've seen it, they've remembered you, and they've come back and they've done something. So view-through conversions are fantastic. We love those to pieces because they're free. And just a quick footnote on this slide. I'm oversimplifying slightly when I say these terms are interchangeable. Strictly they're not, but for the purposes of local marketing, they are. So if people talk about a cost per conversion, they could equally mention cost per lead. So if they're talking about leads in their business, if that's the language they're using, they'll be talking about cost per lead. They might talk about cost per action. They may talk about cost per inquiry. It's the same thing as far as AdWords at a local level is concerned. So you don't need to worry about that. It's the same thing throughout. Be aware, different prospects will use, and different clients will use slightly different variations on the language, and you probably will as well when you're speaking to people. So, okay. I'm just going to flick through into an example on this, and I've got a couple of questions coming in already, so I'll answer those questions. So here you go. I've just scrolled across slightly to get these onto the page for you in this example. So you can see here, this campaign that was spending its $26,000 a month, got 433 conversions for that. In this case, it was a form fill, so it was a form completion. At a 3.45% conversion rate, and on most sites, that's not bad at all. That's far better than your average website will do without any kind of help. So that's pretty good going. And that cost them $60 per conversion. Cost /convers, you can see it shortened there, but they have no view-through conversions because they're not running remarketing. One observation on this is only an example, it's not important, but if I was running that account for them, I'd be screaming at them to be running remarketing because they're probably throwing away 10 to 15% additional conversions there by not running remarketing. So, as you can see, reading across the page, there's nothing complicated here. Again, we've got the question marks when we're in AdWords so we can get additional detail on that. So, hope that makes sense. Okay, right, I'm just going to dive back into some questions. Okay, right, Fran, just to answer your point, you'd like a PDF of my exact words. Repetition, understand completely. What I'm going to do then, given that request, when we finish this, as soon as I get the recording, I'll have it transcribed. Bear in mind, that might take a few days to get a transcriber to come back with that, but I'll take a transcription of this because I appreciate it's technical, and I'll get that thrown in the members area along with the slides, which I'm also being asked about. So you're in the members area, you're going to have a copy of this video, you're going to have a copy of the slides, and you're going to have a transcription of it. So hopefully that gives you absolutely everything that you need. William has asked about how do we track conversions from phone call. Brilliant question. Makes perfect sense. The way we track it is we use a tool called Call Tracking Metrics. And what Call Tracking Metrics does is it uses tracking phone numbers that we can assign to AdWords, and it uses an algorithm to work out which keyword and which ad triggered the phone call from a particular user. It's not 100% accurate, but it's about 90–95% accurate, which in the vast majority of cases is perfectly sufficient because you're just trying to get an idea of what keyword tracked it. So we use that as our conversion tracking tool for phone calls. Conversion tracking is by phone is becoming more and more important. I would heavily and strongly try and suggest to anybody that if you're running local campaigns, you must use tracking phone numbers, whether you use ours or anybody else's, and there's a few products out there for that. Don't let your client run it without a call tracking in place. You will lose AdWords credit for conversions, and by that I mean phone calls that come in, unless you can prove they originated from AdWords, your client will not believe that that's where they came through. So you have to tell them and demonstrate conclusively that that's where they've come from. Okay. and call tracking metrics and active call tracking, I think that Kevin uses, they all do that. Okay. Kay Smith's asked about view-through conversions, whether it's AdWords or a third-party retargeting company. We use AdWords for all our retargeting because it's just so cheap compared to anything else out there. We do use Retargeter and other things with other clients, but AdWords tracking tracks AdWords display retargeting only. It doesn't track the third-party ones. So a view-through conversion in AdWords is only going to track AdWords remarketing. Jordan, I hope my answer to that question covered you off as well on phone calls. Jean's asking for a copy of the slides. Stephen, in terms of how you know whether or not this is good or bad for a particular campaign, you don't. You need to know what the campaign objectives are. You need to know what the profitability is. I'm making general comments on the examples that I see here. I do know that, for example, a click-through rate on a search campaign shouldn't be as low as 0.7%. From lots of experience, I can almost guarantee that I could find the issues behind that particular one relatively quickly. I can almost certainly guess what's going on with that one. That said, I am guessing because I haven't audited this account. I haven't been through it in great detail, and it isn't ours. So that's just, yeah, that is what it is. Okay, right, let's dive on to the next one. So we know what we've spent, we know how well we've spent it, and we know what we've got back. So from a client's perspective, that's absolutely three key things that client is going to want to know. And I've just taken a step out for a second to explain this in terms of how a client is likely to, or a prospect is likely to articulate what they want to you. So a good objective for a client to have for a campaign, for example, is to decrease their cost per lead from X dollars to Y dollars within a given time frame. They might say to decrease cost per acquisition, cost per conversion, cost per inquiry. It's the same thing. They may see to increase the number of conversions from X to Y within a period. Both of those are really good objectives for a local lead campaign because that's what they want. They usually either want more leads or cheaper leads, and usually both. And they're measurable, and you've got a performance target to aim for. So if you're speaking to a prospect, ask the question, how many do you get? How many would you like to get? What do they cost you? Are they profitable? They're all perfectly sensible questions to ask a prospect. Bad objectives, on the other hand, things like increasing click-through rate from 5% to 10%, my argument will be, who cares? Is the campaign profitable? Is it meeting its lead and inquiry objectives? If it is, great. But if not, to be honest, who cares about the click-through rate? Clients sometimes get hung up on something like that, and it's completely irrelevant most of the time, other than the impact it has on their campaign performance. So they're focusing on the wrong measure. Decreasing cost per click, again, it's a nonsense measure in isolation. So I would always push back to the first two. And the worst one, and I guarantee somebody on this call is going to come to either ourselves or another outsourcer or somebody, and they're going to have a conversation with the client. And hopefully when the client says this, you'll smile because you'll think back to this webinar. You'll say, what do you want to do with your AdWords in your campaign? I want more calls. More than what? And they probably won't even know the answer. So if a client says to you, I just want more calls, or I want my phone to ring more, push back. That's a good time to clarify and make them understand what they're actually trying to achieve. There's a whole session in the main training program about expectations. That feeds right into expectations. You can't set an expectation on just want more. So hopefully that makes sense. If anyone's got any questions on that, fire them in. If not, we're going to move on to look at some more detail about AdWords itself. Okay. I'm going to talk about the AdWords hierarchy. This isn't desperately complicated, I don't think, but if you get a question as we go through, let's just fire this in because, again, it's using technical language. The principles are really simple, the language is a little technical. So, shout, don't get stuck. We're here to answer any questions that you've got. So, The highest level in AdWords is a My Client Center account. If you haven't got a My Client Center account for your agency, just go to Google when we come off this call, type in AdWords MCC or AdWords My Client Center, and it will take you a page to sign up for one. It's free. That is where you will manage your client accounts. We cover that in the onboarding and management section of the main training, but if you haven't got that, go and get one. And a My Client Center is simply a place to hold a collection of client accounts. It's a bucket. It's basically a bucket for AdWords accounts. So what actually is an AdWords account? And I've put this in for a specific reason, just to clarify a couple of points. Each of your prospects, our customers, will have an AdWords account. And an AdWords account, they will only ever usually have one. I say only usually. We do come across clients who have more than one AdWords account. Generally, it's against Google Terms of Service, so we don't recommend it. We do have clients that do it. And an account is this big container that has absolutely everything to do with their campaigns, and they're running their ads in it. So what is actually in an account? Okay. The first thing you're going to find in an AdWords account is it is broken down into what we call campaigns. And the definition on screen is Google's definition of a campaign. A set of ads, so the ads that show on the screen, the keywords that we're bidding on and that we're targeting to show our ads, and bids that share a budget, location target, and other settings. So that's what a campaign actually is in Google's perspective. It's a set of ads, keywords, and bids that share a budget and targeting. It's as simple as that. They're often used to organize categories of products or services. And you'll find different agencies, different service providers will set up campaigns in wholly different ways. It doesn't matter to you. You just need to know that when they're talking about campaigns, that's what they're talking about. So if you're a plumber, you may have an AC campaign. You may have a plumbing repairs campaign. You may have an installs campaign. You may have an emergency campaign. So those different services each would have their own campaign with their own keywords, their own ads, and their own settings, because you're trying to sell different services to your prospects. So you want to organize their stuff separately. So that's what a campaign is, and I hope that makes sense. Also, within an account, the only other things that you're going to look at within an account is you're going to have some whole account shared settings. So, for example, what the code you use for conversions. You're going to have some remarketing lists that you set up at account level, and some other bits and pieces. But essentially, that's it. You're going to have billing, set up one billing setup for one account, and in an account, you can control which users have access to it. So that's what you see at an account level. Anybody confused with this so far? Anybody need more clarification or anything that I've not asked or covered? Okay, we're looking good. We'll move on. So in the interface, if you log into AdWords, you'll see the first column when you click on it. I've underlined them in red here. Campaigns. So you can see my example here, a dentist. This particular dentist has a campaign for dental implants. He has a campaign for dental general dentistry. He has a campaign for Invisalign, which are invisible braces. That campaign is grey there. You can see these two are blue and have a green dot here. That means they are active currently. The pause sign and the greying out indicates that that campaign is not currently running. That's paused. And the cosmetic services campaign is also paused. They've got a little icon by them here that indicates the type of campaign that this is. The icon here with the magnifying glass indicates that these are search campaigns, and I'll come on to campaign types in a few moments. But in AdWords, in the interface, that's what you'll see to define a campaign. Okay. So within campaigns, you're going to find three things. You're going to find ad groups, and an ad group is simply a more detailed breakdown of your keywords and your ads than your campaign level. So if I flip back up to this slide here, for dental implants, you might find in that particular one you're going to have an ad group for cheap dental implants. So you're going to target keywords and show ads that relate to people looking for cheap dental implants. You might have an ad group for implants with payment plan, for example, and you're going to use ad copy and language to do that. You may have one for insurance dental implants for people looking for getting implants on their medical insurance. So you see, it's a further breakdown of different types of dental implants. For general dentistry, you might find within general there are things like whitening, there might be things like pediatric dentistry, there might be just general x-rays and dental exams, or walk-in dentistry, for example. They're not big enough for a campaign by themselves, but they're just a subgroup of what you've already got at a campaign level. And ad groups, as you can see, are one of the things you're going to find in there. You're also going to have something called extensions, which are settings that you have to show extra components of an ad, like site links and phone call extensions. And you've also got other settings like campaign types, targeting, what time of day to show ads, what days of the week, what language do you want to show ads to, what types of devices do you want to show ads to. Do you want to show them to computers, to mobiles, to tablets? And incidentally, tablets isn't an option you can turn off, so you're stuck with it. Mobiles you can turn off. So that's what you're going to have in a campaign. And an ad group, just to go on to the next level down, is where you'll find keywords, positive and negative. I put in here, positive keywords are keywords you want to show for, negative keywords are keywords you don't want to show for. Not particularly important at this point, just be aware. The ads that you're going to show, and I've just made a note here for something called ad group level extensions. For this purpose, you can ignore it. You're not likely to use them, but they do exist. And all they are is a subset of these extensions here. You can change them by ad group if you wish. So what does that actually look like? And here's perhaps the best expression of how to look at this. So everything we've covered so far can be summarized in this graph. So at top level, you've got an account. Above that, we may have an MCC account in My Client Center. Within that, you have, in this case, 2 campaigns. Within each of those 2 campaigns, we have ad groups. And within those ad groups, we have keywords, we have ad copy, we have landing pages. So that's a simple summary of what we've gone through so far. That's the structure, technically, of an AdWords account. Anybody got any questions on that part of it? I appreciate it's a bit more technical. It's less important to you. You can probably get through your day without knowing about this stuff. If you know the performance stuff that we talked about earlier, you probably won't need much of this. Either the chat box has stopped or nobody's got any questions. So if okay, right. Just ask the question: what's the difference between a campaign and an ad group? An ad group is nothing more than a subdivision of a campaign. So, as I said, the way I explain it is if you're targeting, let's have a look. Let's say Nike trainers. So if you're targeting Nike trainers, then you might have a campaign for Nike trainers. That you could have a subgroup for men's, an ad group for men's, an ad group for women's. You could go more detailed than that. You might have a campaign for women's Nikes, which has got subgroups, ad groups for size 8, size 9, size 10, or blue, green, black, or running, aerobic, fitness. So it depends on the context of the campaign, but it's simply a more detailed level. The thing to remember with an ad group is ads within an ad group are shared. So anything that's in an ad group will see the same ads. So the key question is, if somebody searches on one of these keywords, is the ad they're going to see in this ad group relevant? If you've got that covered, you're absolutely fine. So hopefully that explains what it is, and hopefully I've not just added more confusion to that. Okay, next one along. Here's just a quick screenshot of an ad group, and you can see here, I've just highlighted this. So I can see we're in the dental implants campaign, so we've drilled down one level, and in this one, you can see cost, implants, different type of cost. I won't go into detail about these because these are relatively just technical, but they're just further breakdowns of what's in an ad group. So different ways of targeting people who are searching for dental implants. That's all it is. You don't need to get too bogged down in it at all. This slide is slightly more important. So if you forget the last couple, because they're not too bad, this one matters more. There are three main types of ad campaign you can run within AdWords. The first one is what's called a search campaign, and that's what the vast majority of your clients, your prospects are going to run all the time. Search campaigns are the text ads that you see whenever you type a search into Google. That's what we're talking about with this course primarily. That's the vast majority of everything that you'll run. And so 99% of the time when we're talking about a campaign, we're talking about a search campaign. Just a subtlety in here, Google also shares its advertising with other search engines like Ask. So ask.com, if you click on an ad in ask.com, it's a Google ad. It's a Google search ad actually that you can choose to show on or not. So you can decide whether or not you want to show on what they call their partner engines. So a partner engine is ask.com and similar. You can turn them on or off. But search is super, super important. Display is showing ads on third-party websites. So you can show graphical or text ads on other websites. You'll recognize them when you see them because they quite often have a little blue triangle in the corner that indicate that they are Google ads. We won't often run a display campaign in a local campaign, a local account, because most local businesses, they don't work. There are a couple of exceptions. So beauty and health related industries, they can work. Plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery, they can work. The vast majority of time, they do not work very well for local businesses, and we wouldn't recommend them. So for most of you, unless you're targeting surgeons and those kind of guys, ignore it. Remarketing is actually a type of display campaign, and it's the only type we would normally recommend for local businesses, and I would strongly recommend it for all local businesses because they work. You follow up with clients, and they can be so, so effective. And I'll give you a really good example of this. Imagine, let's come back to our plumbing client. So we've got a plumber. If we've got a remarketing set up on our account, we can show ads to visitors for up to 18 months after they've been to our website. If they clear their cookies, we lose them, but for as long as they don't clear cookies, we can keep showing ads. So you could, in the autumn, do heating related ads. You could in the winter show boiler breakdown related ads or burst pipe related ads. In the spring you can start and do AC related ads. So at different times of the year you can show different ads to the same people who've already been to your website, and you can make it really clever. You can do offers. You can change the ads to show offers, promotions, pre-Christmas promotions, lots of stuff like that. It's advanced, it's technical, but it's a great way to show, to follow up with your prospects. Stephen, I've just seen a question about a third-party website, and I'll explain that. I'll try and show you an example on screen, and I apologize, that's something I haven't prepped and I should have thought I'd done, but I haven't done. So I will find an example of that and I'll share it in a moment. Okay, any other questions on campaign types? And I'll say the vast majority of the time we're going to talk about search campaigns. And yeah, we use Google for the remarketing. So let's have a look at this. I'm just going to find you an example of a display ad. I'll bring it onto the screen in a moment, so bear with me. Okay. Okay, so a third-party website is any website that Google doesn't own. So it's any website on the internet that's chosen to show Google ads. And the reason they do it is Google pays them. If somebody clicks on a Google ad on a third-party website, so any website that's not a Google ad-owned website, then Google pay the website owner for the click, and you pay Google for the click. So can you see right at the top of this page here, don't use PPC to drive. Okay, doesn't look that exciting. This will almost certainly be me being remarketed to because I was looking at the conversion path website the other day. So you can see the little giveaway ad choices triangle in the top right hand corner. This is a banner. So this is a remarketing banner in this case. If I scroll down the page, there's another remarketing banner, in this case by Google themselves. Google should know by now. I don't need much convincing. I'm pretty sold on Google Ads. Is there any more on this page? There we go. I don't know who that is. I don't know who those guys are, but that's just probably a display campaign for Macon Valley Roofing, whoever they are. That's not a remarketing one, but it's the same idea. Any more down here? Call tracking metrics, our telephone provider. So I've mentioned these on more than one occasion. They're remarketing to me. They ought to be smart and stop remarketing to me because, again, I'm kind of sold. I spend a lot of money with them. Okay, I think that's about does that. Does that answer the question on third-party websites and remarketing? Is that clear to everybody? And yes, that works on YouTube. So we can do that. We can run YouTube campaigns. I haven't mentioned video campaigns and YouTube campaigns within this context because most local businesses would never run a YouTube campaign. We're playing around with ways to make them effective for local businesses, but they're a bit more difficult. Okay, I'll dive on. Okay, we're just about there, guys, so well done for sticking with it this far. We're about through all this technical content, so thank you for your patience. I appreciate this stuff isn't that exciting. I appreciate this stuff isn't selling, but if you know the language you're talking about so far, this will help you a lot when you come to have a conversation with a prospect. So keyword match types. You'll hear this in conversation. You may come up with it when you're talking in a pitch. You'll often come up with this in a campaign audit. So if we do an audit on an account to see if it can be made better, one of the things that we'll nearly always comment on is the keyword match types. And this isn't our diagram. I've stolen this blatantly from somebody else who's done a very good job in describing it. So let's start here. If we start with what's called exact match. So if you're bidding on a keyword on an exact match basis, what that means is, in this case of formal shoes, unless somebody types in exactly the word formal space shoes, your ad will not show. They have to type in exactly that. And an exact match is denoted by these square brackets around it. It's the most targeted, it's the most focused type of ad campaign you can run. If you really know the search terms your prospects are using, exact match is brilliant. It's also the most expensive, but you'll get the highest conversion rates from it usually. Next is formal shoes. And the thing with formal shoes, sorry, is phrase. And the thing with phrase matching is you can see it's got speech marks around it, quotation marks. That's how you know something's phrase match. It also must contain the word formal shoes, but you can put something before it, in this case the word black formal shoes. You can also put words after it, formal shoes for men, providing you use the exact phrase formal shoes in that search. So that is less targeted, you'll get more searches, but you probably won't convert at the same high rate as you would do for an exact, because you're not quite sure what the user's searching for. In this example here, as you can see, people looking for black formal shoes and people looking for formal shoes for men are actually after two completely different things, so you won't convert as well because it's hard to write ad copy that's just as good for black shoes as it is to formal shoes. So you need to bear that in mind. The next two are very, very similar. Modified broad. Modified broad is essentially, you can see a plus sign on it. This says any search term that includes the word formal and include the word shoes, show my ad. You can see that will include misspellings, and they don't have to be in the same order, providing they include those two words. So it's much broader. You'll get a lot more waste with something like this, but it's cheaper. There's a lot more of it, so you'll get more traffic. So depending on your objectives, it works. Same one here, modified broad, a slightly different example. Only one word's got the plus in front of it, and what Google then has the freedom to do is show my ad for any keywords that include the word shoes and something that we think is similar to formal. So in this case, they've substituted formal with evening and black dress shoes because they're kind of related to formal. So that's modified broad. And finally, broad, which if you just put the word formal shoes in broad, Google will show your ad for anything vaguely related to formal shoes, like formal footwear, evening footwear, men's dress. You'll get all sorts in there. So I show you that because it will come up in an audit, because often in an audit people have too much broad, so they waste a lot of money and not enough targeted exact and phrase match type searches. So their campaigns are inefficient, there is waste going on because they've got too broad a targeting on the keywords. So if and when we get on a proposal call together, or we're speaking to a client, or you're seeing one of our audit reports, you'll almost certainly see in there something that says keyword targeting, too broad or too narrow, and here's the cost impact on the client in terms of money spent or leads lost. So you'll hear those words a lot. Couple of questions coming in on this. Is phrase less expensive than exact? Usually yes. So if you imagine in terms of price, start with most expensive at exact here, and each step out you usually go cheaper. So each step away from exact is usually a cheaper click. And you can even control that to a degree in AdWords. So yes is usually the answer. Modified broad fan is in here twice for us. One reason really, in that you can have all words with modified with the plus in front of them, or you can just put one or a few of them, and you'll get slightly different results by doing that. So yes, it's repetitive. They could have on this particular slide put it in once. It's just trying to illustrate that you can do it with everything plus, or with just some of the key phrase plus, in which case this will get treated as broad. So the word formal here is actually a broad keyword because it can be substituted with other words. Okie dokie. We're about there, guys. Last thing to particularly mention, other terms that you're going to come across. Landing page. Hopefully everybody's aware of what a landing page is. A landing page is simply the specific page on a website that a visitor lands on when clicking an ad. I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause for a second because Jordan just come with a question on the last one. The broader the campaign, the more important negative keywords are. Jordan, hit the nail on the head. Yes, if you're using broad match keywords, you need to use negative keywords. Negative keywords are simply a way of telling Google not to show your ad for a particular keyword. So in this case, formal shoes, because it can show anything, it can show for formal footwear, evening footwear, you might want to put in here, if you're a company that sells shoes, you might want to put in the word hire as a negative because you don't hire or rent formal shoes. So hire or rent or rental would be a good negative to put in there because you can guarantee that if you don't rent shoes out, anybody who clicks on your ad that's looking for rental shoes is going to be wasting your money. And remember, it's wasting your client's money every time they do that. So the further away from exact you go, the more important negative keywords become. So Jordan, good shout. I didn't mention that. Thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate that. Okay, back to other terms. So landing page is a specific page on a website that the user sees when they click on an ad. A few points on landing pages. It can be the website homepage. Isn't necessarily the best place to send traffic to. We would always recommend sending traffic to the absolute most relevant page for the particular term that you've bid on. So if you're bidding on formal shoes and you're a outfitters, you want to take them to your formal shoes page, if possible, or a specific page you've designed just for AdWords traffic to do with formal shoes. So it can be any page, whatever you want, but it's called a landing page. It's the page that people see when they click the ad. You'll also hear the word split testing. You'll hear it sometimes referred to as A/B testing, but split testing is basically a method of testing variables that are important in your campaign. And by a variable, I mean, if you're bidding on the word formal shoes, you could run two ads, one saying best formal shoes, one may say cheapest formal shoes, you could run a third, you could run black formal shoes. And the aim of a split test is to see which ad performs better. And when we're talking about performing better, we're going back to what I spoke about earlier on. So we're talking about which one gets the most inquiries, which ad gets the highest click-through rate. And typically when people are talking about split testing, they're usually talking about one of two things. Ad copy, to see which ad gets clicked the most, or a landing page to see which converts the most. I'm slightly simplifying for this purpose. You can do other things, you can measure other things, but for the purposes of most local campaigns, what they're interested in is which landing page gets them the most inquiries and which ads get them the most traffic. So that's what you'll hear. You'll hear the word split testing, use the word A/B testing as another way of saying it. Multivariate testing is a term you might hear sometimes. We don't particularly do multivariate testing. It's too complicated for AdWords usually. Kate, to answer your question in terms of split test tool, we've written our own in-house for ad copy. So we've written our own in-house tool for ads. For landing pages, we use Unbounce. If a client hires us to build a landing page, we always use Unbounce for it because it works so well. So all our pages are Unbounce pages. But for ad copy, we've got our own automated tools that are quite complicated but work really well. William, in terms of home pages and sending traffic to a home page, William's asked a great question, which is if you're sending traffic to a home page, do you require your client to put your tracking phone number on the home page? The way that our particular tracking system works is it works in an automated way. So what it does is it looks at sorry, I'm trying to explain this in a simple way without getting too technical. I apologize if I'm stumbling over words slightly. You don't take the number off the page as such. So you don't take the client's phone number off the page. There's a little piece of JavaScript code that the call provider gives to us that you can put on the page, and when the click comes from AdWords, it swaps the phone number out on the page and dynamically shows them an AdWords tracking number. So for any regular visitor, the client website is not affected in any way, shape or form. It's exactly their normal phone number, untracked. If it's an AdWords visitor, call tracking metrics code on the landing page recognizes that and swaps the phone number over. So it doesn't affect things like citations. It doesn't affect Google Plus listings. It's really a great way of doing it. And yeah, William, it's really cool. That's why that is a single reason why we chose call tracking metrics over other providers. Some other providers now do it, but that was the reason we chose them in the first place. So we had an easy way of showing a different phone number to AdWords visitors without messing up their website, because most business owners don't want to change their phone number on their website, so they're not affected. Rick, yes, I'll do a specific session on landing pages. There's landing page templates going into the membership site this week for some of the major niches. When we put those templates in, which will be probably Wednesday or Thursday, I will also run a training session and a video on how to use those landing pages and how to work with them with clients. In terms of Lisa's asked the question, sorry Lisa, I apologise. Do we create landing pages included with a PPC pricing? We charge for landing pages over and above management fees. But typically, depending on how complex it is, between $250 and $350 for a landing page, that sort of price. And then if they want variations on a page, then they're cheaper as well. That's our pricing. You may do them yourself. So if you can use Unbounce or any landing page tool, even WordPress, you can build landing pages, we can build them for you, or you can contract a third party to build them for you. The key thing is that you do them right. And when I upload the templates this week, I'll also put a checklist in there of what to look for in a good landing page so that you can see what we think about when we build landing pages, because there are common elements in landing pages that make them work and common errors that make them not work so well. So, yeah, we'll come on to that later in this week in another training session. And thank you, Lisa. That's very nice. Right, that's the formal bit over here. And that's taken just over an hour, so that was pretty good going. I didn't know how long that was going to take. Anybody got any questions specifically on what we've just covered in terms of the language, the terms that you'd like to see, anything that I've not covered in there that you would have liked to see me cover in terms of language? Go ahead, find them in the chat box now, and we'll try and work through some. I'll just give it a second because I can see people are typing. The key thing with all of this stuff, whilst people get questions in, is to say it's not about being an expert. You do not need to understand every line of this. You do not need to know the full implications of everything. All you need to do is be able to sound like you understand the language when you talk to a prospect. If you understand the language, a great line to use is when you're speaking to people, if they're put on the spot, and somebody says to you, oh, what do you think about my 27.6% click-through rate? You can always defer the question. And a lot of our agencies do this all the time. You can say, well, that sounds okay to me, but I'm not the expert. Our PPC team back at the office will have far more detailed knowledge on this than I do, so I'll check in with them and I'll come back to you with the correct answer. All you've got to do is not stumble. You can just say, take the question away, make an initial comment, and take it back to the team and go back. Mohammed's asked the question, can we do this PPC business from anywhere? Absolutely. AdWords is supported pretty much worldwide in all the major markets. We're even doing some in some undeveloped South American markets at the moment, and you can prospect and sell in other countries. We have agencies selling in lots of countries that they aren't currently based in. We've sold from agencies in the US into even Caribbean islands in some cases. We have guys in New Zealand who've sold into the US. We similarly have guys in New Zealand selling into Australia. So you can, there's all sorts of things you can do there. You don't have to be physically located in a particular area. Lots of our agencies will not even visit clients. They will sell webinar and phone. So location is not really important. HE, and I apologize, I don't know what your first name is, HE, because it's signed in as that into GoToWebinars. Mentioned about a word I haven't mentioned. Good shout. Dynamic keyword insertion. I will try and keep dynamic keyword insertion simple. Essentially what dynamic keyword insertion is I'll get a notepad on screen so I can show you. Bear with me 1 second. Here we go. Right, dynamic keyword insertion. Thank you. That's great. I felt terrible saying HE. If someone does a Google search, let's say the search term is black formal shoes. Okay, so someone's done a search on the word black formal shoes. If, for example, you have an ad, dynamic keyword insertion is usually used in two places. It's used in your ad and sometimes on the landing page. So let's look at the ad first of all. An ad in Google consists of three main lines. You've got a headline, you've got a description 1, and a description 2. That's the anatomy of a Google ad. 3 lines. You've then got a URL underneath it. And sometimes this layout varies, but it doesn't really matter for this purpose. I'm not worried about that for now. So in your headline, a typical ad would say, for example, black formal $1.49. You could then put, and this is terrible ad copy by the way, but I'm just typing quickly for this example. Lots of styles. Okay, that's what an ad would look like in Google normally. I say it might not be the best ad in the world, but it's as fast as I can type at this point, so I'm trying not to hold that up with me typing. So that's what a normal ad would look like. You can use something called dynamic keyword insertion, and dynamic keyword insertion looks like this. So let's take the same ad. I'm going to use it in the headline, and what you do in that is you would put, let's make this work. Okay. So what I've done here is I've put in this bracket here. This bracket is so squirrely brackets, keyword, and best formal shoes. So what would happen here if someone types in black formal shoes? What they would see is this gets replaced with black formal shoes. If on the other hand they typed in green formal shoes, this would get replaced with green formal shoes. The reason that you have these words in here is if that somebody types in a search term that is longer than 25 characters, which is the maximum you can have for an ad headline, then it uses this instead. So these words get used instead of the keyword. So that's what's called dynamic keyword insertion. It's basically saying replace this text in my ad with the keyword the user used, providing it fits into the headline. And you can use it anywhere in the ad. You can also use it on landing pages. Personally, and this is a personal comment, but it's based on evidence that we've tested, with our business we run lots and lots of tests, and one of the tests we ran about 3 months ago was how ads with dynamic keyword insertion in the headline compare to non-dynamic keyword insertion ads. The dynamic lost every single time, so we don't use it that often. There are some places it works really well with things like big product lists, but that's one of the few times we would currently use it. But good question. Thank you for that. That's exactly what a dynamic keyword insertion is. I hope that makes sense for everybody. Roger's asked about, do we use landing page templates? We're going to provide some landing page templates, Roger. They'll be in the middle of the week. You don't have to use landing page templates. We have clients who run campaigns to their own website, and if the website's any good, that can work really well. We have clients who design their own website, their own landing page templates, and absolutely fine. There are people who sell landing page template designers. There's lots of options out there. There's no right or wrong. The only question is it going to get a better conversion rate than my existing page? Can we make the page more compelling? So we would recommend using templates that have proven elements into them, and I say we're going to provide you with a checklist for that so you know what they are, you know what to look out for in a landing page. I hope that answers that question. Mohammed's asked about US and UK. Tomorrow morning we're launching Australia, Canada and Singapore into the Boost My PPC system. So you can sell to anywhere you want. Boost My PPC as of today supports US and UK. By tomorrow morning, Australia, Canada and Singapore will also be supported. We're adding in a couple more countries later in the week as well. So there's a big upgrade coming out tomorrow morning for that. Fran, great question. I'm going to read this out word for word so we get this right. How do you handle selling more than one in an area? If I go after a particular type of client and I have 5 appointments and then 2 buy, what do you do? Here's what we do. We typically will run 2 because very rarely do 2 clients have the exact same requirement from a campaign or exactly the same offer. Think about it this way. If you've got 2 dentists, let's use dentists in an area for example. One dentist may be a specialist emergency work, they may be low priced, they may sell on value and availability. You may have another dentist who sells on quality of service, being high priced, high end cosmetic. Unless the 2 providers are offering exactly the same thing, there's a pretty good chance that the people who will be attracted to the first business won't be attracted to the second business, and so on. So you can usually find enough differences between the 2 to legitimately run more than one campaign. And providing you do that by splitting the message up, it's not normally an issue. Very rarely do people want to go for exactly the same generic keywords in the same town with the same kind of offer and the same kind of proposition. If we ever come across that situation, we would decline if that's really what they wanted us to do. But if I'm honest, we see it probably once or twice a year at absolute max at the moment, where 2 offers really are so so similar that you couldn't ethically take them both on and do the best job for both. And we also split them internally in our place within our management team. So different account managers would run both campaigns. So they both run to the best of our abilities. Let me get to the next one. Google Ad Maps. Great question. 2 people have asked similar questions about Google Ad Maps. Google Maps ads. Google Maps ads run in local and can run really, really well. They come under AdWords Express. They tend to be less functional than ordinary ads, but yes, they can sometimes work well for local. The best thing for local is to run the location extension or places extension within the main AdWords campaign, which what that does is it shows the address as part of the ad. Showing the address as part of the ad can do 2 things. It can give you better qualified people because they know where you are before they click your ad. So hopefully only people who are interested in your ad click it because they know, and if you're the wrong side of town, they won't click it. On the downside, fewer people will click your ad because you may be the wrong side of town. So yes, we run those as standard as part of any campaign. Just a heads up on that, Google, as you probably saw a week or so ago, changed the way that they link business places listings to Google AdWords. They've made it slightly more difficult, so your clients need a Google Places Plus page to be able to link them now. Hef's got a question about Boost My PPC and some strange results he's seen there. Hef, if it's okay, I will take that offline because that's quite a detailed question about the tool, and I'm going to run a Q&A session tomorrow on the tool specifically. I've got an explanation for you on that, but it's probably not relevant to this conversation now, if that's okay, so please don't think I'm pushing that away. I'll pick that up with you tomorrow, and we're going to run a session on the Boost My PPC tool tomorrow anyway, so that'll be a good opportunity to answer that. And I'll make sure you get an answer directly on that one. Right. Lise, awesome question. If a company is already ranking on the first page of Google for PPC keywords, is it worth the time to also do PPC? It is absolutely worth the time to do PPC. Couple of reasons for that. Even if you're position number 1 in the organics, you're already halfway down the page, you will be missing out on a lot of traffic from the ads. So if it's converting for you on SEO because you're number 1, I can almost guarantee you will get overall more conversions by running PPC alongside your SEO. You may cannibalize a little, but overall the result is nearly always worth it. Along with that, branded campaigns fall into that same category. That some businesses don't like bidding on their own brand name, but it's well worth doing that because it's so cheap at the same time. People get lazy when they search, so even if they're searching for something you're number 1 for, there's a pretty good chance, as we saw in the sales webinar, that they're going to click an ad because the ads now are getting so big they dominate the page. So definitely, if they're ranking number 1 already, you can guarantee to give them a boost. Reg has asked a question about Google Plus Local. We don't currently offer Google Plus Local implementations. We're looking at it right now, actually. It wasn't important until a couple of weeks ago when Google made that change and made it mandatory. Until then, we could get around it without a Google Places listing, but we'll almost certainly bring out a Google Plus local listing service within the next couple of months, because it's now become a bit more of an integral part of AdWords. So absolutely, we're going to have to do that, I think, because some clients will need it and they won't be able to solve it for themselves. Okay, any other questions? I've got through the chat box right now, so hopefully I've answered everything that was there. I'll just double check I've not missed anything. No, I think I'm there. Fantastic. Right, what I'm going to do then, thank you all for your time. I appreciate that tonight. If you've registered for this webinar, you're automatically registered for all the upcoming webinars. So the next one is late tomorrow UK time, as in I think it's about 2 a.m., Tuesday morning. I apologise, I sent out an email from the airport on Friday. For those of you who saw, I had a nightmare trying to get back to the UK this weekend, so I'm about 24 hours before later than I should have been, so I'm about a day behind. Never fly United. They cost me 24 hours of hell and lost baggage and all sorts of other things. But we're now back. I sent out an email on Friday saying the next webinar was Tuesday night. It's actually at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's actually Monday. So apologies for that. It will be 2 a.m. tomorrow. You're already registered if you've registered for this. We will do a replay, and I'm going to keep mixing session times up because I'm conscious we've got people from all over the world. I know that whatever time we pick, it's great for some people and terrible for other people, so I'm going to try and mix them up. You've always got our contact details. You know where we are. You've got our email addresses. If you've ever got a question that isn't covered in those, fire it into us and we'll deal with it as quickly as we can. The first week of going live, as it's our first ever product we put out into the market, has been technically challenging, and we've had lots of issues that we didn't expect to have from the testing program that we've done. We're through that just about now, so we are getting on top of things, and if you've got any questions, absolutely delighted to work with you and help you in any way that we can. So thank you all for tonight. Thank you all for the kind comments in the chat box. That's genuinely appreciated. Hope you got some value out of being here, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye for now.